You're listening to Till the Bottom, Round 2. We started off with a conversation on the search for identity in this interconnected world. To engage with us in this conversation, we have Jiaying Lin. Jiaying is pursuing her PhD in urban planning in the environmental science faculty of the Dresden University of Technology. Our discussion digs into the cultural dissonance between the East and West and the identity crisis that arises for someone who has 1 foot in both the worlds. We apologize for the background humming noise that appears intermittently. So, here we go again. Let's start talking.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Till the Bottom. We are your hosts, Mitra and Nacho. And for this episode, we have here our guest coming directly from China. Well, not directly. She's been living in Dresden for the last how many years now?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Her name is, I'm gonna try, but if I mispronounce it, because surely I will mispronounce it, please correct me.
It's okay.
Jiaying Lin.
Good.
Yeah, good enough. Okay. Jiaying is in Dresden doing her PhD. She's also in the Dresden University of Technology in the Faculty of Ecological Science? Environmental Sciences. But as it is a tradition here, we are not going to talk about your research.
Yeah,
just that's what
let the experts do the talking about the expert point of views. We'll give a nuance.
Which doesn't mean that you're not an expert. Probably by now you're an expert or close to one, or you at least aspire to be one. What we're going to talk about today, it's a topic that I think in this day and age it hits a very sensible chord with a lot of people, because we're going to talk about identity. And I think in the contemporary landscape, every time somebody starts talking about identity, I don't know, at least this happens to me, I don't know if it happens with you, the first concept that comes to my mind is identity politics. Probably we'll get to that at some point, but what's at the core of what we're going to talk about, which is also a feature that is very, very salient, very central in the topic of identity politics, is this, let's say, quest or struggle to define one's identity. And if that's what you happen to be into, there's people, I happen to be one of those, that I really do not spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, but I find it interesting to think about it and to kind of try to extract what's of value in the exercise of defining your identity, and to try to get to some ground or basic core essential properties that are those that define one's identity. And we're going to talk about that because that happens to be a topic that I think it's interesting for you.
Yeah. Just wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, sure.
I guess it's not about the value of finding identity or the utility of it, but the instinctive nature in us which makes us yearn for it.
Yeah.
So it's not. It may not be something which is valuable, and maybe that is where there's some misplaced agenda that comes in as soon as you try to see, okay, this has no value. But it's more like something so inbuilt in us that we try to identify, and we come from someplace, right?
Yeah, I think that can be the angle you're most interested to explore.
Okay.
I probably will be on the other side of the aisle, but we'll see where we're surely converge at some point. Anyway, Jiaying, so we thought that for starters we'll just ask you a little bit about your life story, because for this particular topic it's essential that you tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, and I think probably also give some, I don't know if motivation of why you decided to leave your home to come to Dresden, or more like which kind of differences you experienced or which contrast you experienced when you arrived to Dresden, and how did that kind of fed back into your prior assumptions about your lifestyle, your identity back in China. So where exactly you come from in China?
Shanghai, like from the city.
Mm-hmm.
So before I came to Dresden, I lived like all my life, 25 years in Shanghai. I traveled to other places but never lived in another country. So this is not Dresden, but Germany is the first place that I lived.
Okay.
And I guess a lot of us are a bit ignorant about the geography of China. so maybe you can also place it where exactly is Shanghai and the context with respect to the other cities or the language and...
Okay. China, probably you know it's in the far east. Somewhere in the east.
Yeah.
And then Shanghai is in the east part of China, but more in the middle. So it's like between the south and the north.
So it's still completely continental.
It's next to the sea. It's like at the entrance of the river that goes to the sea. So it's a harbor city.
Yeah, I think the first issue that I would like to highlight, which is I think very obvious, because I assume that most people listening to this have probably most of them have never personally been in Shanghai, but obviously it is a well-known fact that it's a megalopolis. It's a huge city. It's a huge economic hub in China, which is probably the most fast rising economy in the world right now. I don't know if I think it's still probably, I don't know exactly, but that's how people, that's the basic concept that people have about Shanghai. On the other hand, Dresden, it's not quite near. It doesn't quite fit that description. So,
but it is the biggest city in East Germany.
The biggest city in East Germany, in the East German context, that is something. But compared to Shanghai,
it's
scale,
like 50 times difference in population.
50 times difference.
So what's the population in Shanghai?
Like almost 25 million. So here it's like 500,000.
Yeah.
Right?
So
it's like 50.
Population is a factor. But I know the first kind of idea that comes to my mind is obviously in terms of infrastructure.
Okay.
These cities belong to quite different universes. Not saying that Dresden has bad infrastructure, because it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't. But in terms of scale, somehow, there's not a downtown here with skyscrapers or anything like that. There's not this ebullience of living in a megalopolis full of people all the time. And I don't know if you experience some sort of, how to call it, shock. I wouldn't call it cultural shock, but downsizing, let's say, of everything.
Okay, I think the downsizing, like without skyscrapers, is not a problem because it's too much pressure on you if you cannot see the sky or the nature in a huge city like Shanghai. But it's the first shocking point is that nothing is open on Sunday.
Oh boy, yeah.
It's empty. It's really dead, the city. And then I arrived on the day which is like snowing. And it's even worse. It feels like so cold and empty, the city. I was like, what are you going to do for this whole day? Just staying at home.
You arrived during winter.
Yeah.
Oh.
The end of the winter, yeah.
But you also probably felt similar, like emptiness or the lack of chaos.
Yeah, but for me it was a very welcome kind of thing.
You embraced it.
I embraced it quickly, I guess. No, I mean, I love big city. I really like my life in Mexico City, which is also a huge city. I liked it. I like the fact that, all big cities have to offer, which is like an endless roster of activities. There's always something going on. There's always something to do. There's this fast pace. I didn't have much of a problem with that. I actually like it, but I also like the other side of the coin. I like the, say, if not the quietness per se of Dresden, there was some sense of reliability, that things worked. Everything worked nicely. Everything was, especially with the public transport.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
You forget the architecture, forget the landscape, which is very, very different to Mexico City. That part of the transport was for me such a huge blessing.
But I'm assuming in Shanghai those things are also in quite in place.
It also works in Shanghai, so I don't have that up part about this public transport or things work, because it also works in Shanghai, but maybe not.
I mean, Mexico City works, but it's incredibly crowded.
It is.
That was kind of my...
Yeah.
My impression is Shanghai will be a lot more efficient than
Mexico City.
That was. And I'm not even going to talk about the Indian cities.
I'm not sure. I've never been to Mexico and India.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you arrived here during winter, and everything was obviously winter here. Winter here, the night starts at 5, 4, 5. It's already dark.
4:30.
Yeah, and the sunrise is around 8, 9, something like that, more or less.
Yeah.
So quite late, so there's a very long period of darkness every day. It's very cold. If it snows, it really snows. It's not quite easy to make your life outdoors.
Yeah.
And the loneliness. A lot of people experience that. So I wanted to ask you, I've heard many stories of people arriving during that period here, coming from warmer places, having this kind of semi-depressing stage or semi-depressing mood and wanting to go back almost immediately, and people having that kind of an experience. Did you experience something like that?
Yeah, but it's not in the first few months I arrived, I think. It's not because of the weather. It's cold because you have the heating inside. It's so nice, which we don't have in Shanghai because it's already in the south. So we draw a line. So everything below that line, you don't have the heating.
So it is like defined by the government.
Yeah, defined by the government.
Okay.
So
although it's really a line.
Yeah.
There's
I mean, it's not
actually
drawn on the floor,
virtually
but a virtual well-defined line.
Yeah.
Oh,
Virtual well-defined line. So
That's a lot of conceptual difference between how we see governance and how China sees governance, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you're on the other side of the river, but you don't have heating anymore.
I thought you were speaking metaphorically. And I was like just going along, like sure, the line, but there's a
there's a line. Yeah, there's a line, and we are not even close to that line, so it's fine that we don't have heating. Anyway, we get used to that.
But you probably don't need heating, or do you need heating?
Wow, it can go to -5.
Ooh.
No, you do need.
And it's very humid, so you feel even colder when you're staying indoor.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have the heating, but that's not our topic.
But what about your personal adjustment?
Yeah, personal adjustment, I think it's about building your own circle here. For the first 2 months, I think they provide very good welcome center, this international office. They try to organize some events, and then you will meet some people in the excursions or in German course. But it's like you just meet them once. You're not going to really hang out a lot. So it gets better after I meet this group of people that we meet regularly once a week. And then you feel you establish your circle here. But the few months you just feel loneliness. Yeah.
But how was life just about the time when you're leaving China? How was life like? You were always having friends and you guys were meeting?
I think it's easier because in China you have your colleagues. You also hang out with your colleagues a lot, but I think in Germany it's not that much the case. I think it's
might be. The thing is, in this city, my impression is that most of the Germans that we know are locals. They come from nearby towns. There's not a lot of. My impression is that there's not a lot of migration from larger German cities into Dresden. So for the most part, they already have their own groups of friends, that are childhood friends or high school friends or whatever. So they already have this core social circle, and possibly that's one obstacle, for integration, just generally speaking, right, of foreigners. So that's about your social integration. But now, since we want to focus on identity, I'm kind of interested in what was happening inside, or how your internal perception of your person or of your persona has changed, coming from China and now being here 3 years, and if you have had some sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, identity crisis or anything of the sort. How do your personal evolution in that regard?
Okay, I think this crisis comes after I went back to China. After 1.5 years, I haven't been back home, and I just went back and I realized how much I have changed inside. when I'm here. So how differently I see things and how I see what's happening in China and how people are behaving, I kind of have a different filter.
Like you have like some concrete examples? Like their life is developing at a, would say, faster rate? They're getting married, they're stuff like that?
Yes, like every day the life pace is very fast. Even when I'm just walking on the streets, I don't have actually a real job or pressure. I'm just doing my field work. Like I have some interviews, I will conduct them.
So you also carry your work to...
Yeah, I carry my work case study in my home city. But I'm not as stressed as people who are working. But the people who are around you already give you the pressure that they have. You already feel that everyone has that pressure to be really fast and efficient. And when you are around,
but this is the perspective change in how work is seen in your in Shanghai and how work is seen by Germans.
Yes.
Like here, people give a lot of emphasis outside work to a different. So it's a lifestyle change, which is somehow over time. Even with me, like when I came here, it was we knew that back in India, everything like you're defined by your work. But as soon as you come here, you realize, wait a minute, that's just an ideology that was fed to us and we completely ingrained within us. But when you come here, you see that people spend so much emphasis on defining themselves based on their hobbies, what they're doing outside. And that's a concept that over time gets into us as well, right?
Yes.
And that's where you feel some sort of a disconnect with people back home also.
Yes.
And this is what you're referring to.
Yeah, this is what I'm referring to. And it's so difficult to just organize a meeting with my friends because everyone is working and working overtime. So I said, okay, we meet on Sunday. But some people have to still work on Sunday or go back to work after we just had a lunch. They said, okay, we have to go back to the office now. And then I'm like, oh my God. And what are we doing? We just have work in our life. So that's like the working part. And then in your social life, when you go back to your family and the friends of your family, and then people are asking you like, okay, are you still single? When do you plan to get married or something like that?
So you get pressure because of that?
I don't feel pressure. I would see it more like from a third person. Like it's not really related to me, but I have that in my mind. It's like, come on, it's normal that you are single now because we're in a different generation. Yeah.
So you don't internalize it. So
I don't internalize it.
You live with it. You know it's coming your way. Possibly when
they're
you
going
go
to
back.
ask that annoying
Yeah,
question.
And you're
I know
somehow
that.
prepared for this kind of questioning, but you have not internalized it. You have not taken that as some sort of criticism of your personal life or anything like that. Now, I have a related question about that particular aspect of Chinese life because we have another friend, probably you know her, Kongsi.
Yeah.
And she gave a presentation about something that she called, I don't know if this is the popular way of calling it in China or if it even exists as a term or a category or not, which is a leftover women.
Yeah.
Which is this, okay, maybe you can explain that better.
It is.
But first of all, if it's a thing, and what kind of a thing that is. What is a leftover woman?
Leftover woman, it's like gets very popular to describe women who are over 25 and you are still single, like you're not married.
Over 25.
Over 25.
This is a definition specific of China or is a term used everywhere in the world?
I only knew that in China.
Yeah, it's the first time I
think it's the first time I'm listening about that.
Probably we have similar concepts in Asia. Maybe.
No, not that term. That term is not
Not
common.
term, but that concept.
But that impression, the issue that you have,
Yes.
every Indian faces as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like you are over limit of age and you're too old.
And
to
that's
be
also
still
not
single.
a metaphorical line of age, like 25 and you're above that.
Yeah.
It's defined by the government.
I wouldn't surprise me anymore.
Not really, but I'm surprised because I think they all almost get some evidence or support for that. It's like over 25, your body or dysfunction is going to decline, so you're going to start aging. So they said like you should take your use now. especially for women.
It's a very utility-based argument.
Yeah, it's very utility. It's like your value is going to decline after 25, so make use of your time.
But I imagine, I'm trying to figure it, kind of get an idea of how this affects interactions or social interactions in the Chinese context. Because usually when you invent a name for something, for a category, for a group of people or whatever, I don't want to say it makes the label makes the group real or something like that, but it makes you more aware that group exists as a particular category. So if you have this notion of leftover women being those that are still single after 25 years old, that somehow makes you more aware of you crossing that metaphorical line and then turning into a leftover woman. And and does that have a weight in Chinese women to some degree?
Because that's the point, right? Like, of course, it's a concept, leftover woman. How strongly do people use the term, or how much of an impact that has? Because it can be a flimsy term that people are just throwing at each other for fun. It might have been much more important back in the days, but now it's not got that much weight as it used to.
Yeah, it depends on your age and where you're from. I think for young people, maybe you just use that for fun. And for more like older people or in more traditional areas, they would still have that in your mind. So they start arrange blind dates or for you, so that you meet people. Like, if you're not meeting the one that you like, we were going to recommend someone for you.
I mean, probably you are also familiar with that practice.
Well, we don't call it blind dates.
Similar, like arranged.
Yeah, I think it's also a more regressive than that in India.
What do you mean by regressive?
I don't know, like blind date also, the term kind of sounds like both of them have a choice.
It's a euphemism, right?
But at home, like in India, I think maybe in some cities, it's still more like a courting period where you decide both sides. But I'm assuming it's still quite prevalent in India that most of the time the choice is with the man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a bit more regressive in that direction. I'm assuming in China it's a bit more 50-50.
Yes. Yeah. It's like the two families, they will check each other's profiles and then...
So the issue is much deeper, and I don't think we should go in that direction.
More like a transaction among equals. A marital transaction.
Which is still fine, because that happens because in principle that happens in Germany as well.
What do you mean?
Like not with decided by the parents.
No,
but the online dating thing is quite common here now. Which is in principle, in theory, it's pretty similar.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't go to Mexico very often, so my view of the world is very, I would say, Germanocentric now. So, and but it's quite common to see in the tram stops, for instance, this publicity about dating websites and dating apps, and they have different categories, right? It's not just, I mean, there's no publicity for Tinder. Tinder, everybody knows it exists, and Tinder is just
but it's not Tinder. I think there are genuine websites where people are looking for.
What I want to say is that they have like stratified categories. You know, there's like this Parship.de that seems actually I don't know, but there's
for
elite partner, people with degrees. It says there are people with niveau, which is like an academic degree. And
so in principle, the online dating website is doing pretty much what your parents also do. Your parents
without the pressure factor.
The pressure factor.
The pressure comes.
But honestly. The one thing is that when your parents are choosing a mate for you, or at least like choosing an option of a mate for you, they are also looking at like compliance, like not compliance, compatibility. So they will choose from someone who is in the same kind of a sub-circle that is familiar with them.
Yeah, but the thing is...
That may not be familiar with you. So that is a different question. But you are far away and you have evolved and changed in some ways.
Yeah, the thing is, your parents are different generations, so they have a different criteria in their mind.
Yeah, totally.
So, I also had that experience. Like, I got profile from other people.
And you received their profiles?
I received the profile, but it's also written by the man's family, like parents.
So you printed the profile, put them on your desk.
No. They just send like wild.
No, she has this box which she opens and throws another.
No, it's funny because the parents wrote it so it looks like a CV. So it's like education and awards, like honors, like he got and this stuff, and I was like,
first author publication.
Yes, yeah, and I was like, are you trying to get a job from me? No, I'm not going to give you a job. It's very funny. So like in the end,
But in principle, you asked the question in a similar way, right? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
Hopefully with you. Wink, wink.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
I mean, that should make fun of it. But,
Do you want to take a tangent? Or
no,
do you want to probe further?
I want to back into identity, but if you want
that's what I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
How Chinese or Shanghainese did you feel when you were leaving Shanghai? Like, how hard was it for you to leave the place?
Leave?
Yeah.
It was not difficult for me to leave.
So you didn't feel that, fuck, I'm going to a completely alien place now. So that's like...
No. I was not scared because...
But you were excited on the other hand.
Yeah, maybe partly because Shanghai is already a more occidental city than the other parts of China. So when people travel to Shanghai, they feel like it doesn't feel like China.
Okay.
Maybe it's the same when you go to Hamburg here. You also doesn't feel it's really German.
Yeah, well, I was there once.
But you have to really live there to understand.
Yeah, it happens with these like international contexts.
Yeah.
So you have all these different cultures there already.
Yeah. But it's still like different within a certain sphere of familiarity in comparison to here where you're meeting. I'm assuming if you go to the Welcome Center and meeting people from everywhere, it's like a sudden cultural overcharged cultural package that you're getting.
Yeah, the thing is, in our case, it's a little bit different than just being a, let's say, non-academic immigrant, because we don't come directly to mingle with the host society per se. We come actually to try to integrate ourselves forcefully just by the fact that we decided to come here to develop our academic careers. We come and we are immediately embedded in a international, multicultural setting. So that definitely, on the one hand, it delays your integration with the host society big time. It's not so easy. Because there are few Germans. I mentioned this before in the podcast already. In my master, we had like 14 students, out of which 2 were Germans, right? Oh. And they already have people around them, family, friends, etc.
So the Germans felt like foreigners.
Yeah. So it's it has a lot of fun factor somehow in it, because it's a little bit chaotic in the beginning. I don't know, especially when you come, I think, to do a master's degree, because you're still meeting people from everywhere, all sorts of ideologies and ways of doing things, and ideas of how the world should work, and stuff like that, and you're trying to swallow everything in and adapt very quickly to all of this like multifaceted environment.
Which probably you also faced, like you probably had friends from all over.
Yeah, now I have friends from all over.
And do you often go, hang on a minute, that's a bit strange, like because people come from different parts of the world, have different views on things, different ways of doing things, or was it like that's something strange, or was it like, ooh, that's something strange? Like there are 2 different ways of looking at it, right?
For me, it's the second one. It's when I go, oh, this is something new. It's interesting.
So that it's something that engages you, you get excited.
Yeah, but it was not easy at the beginning because at least for me in Shanghai, I don't have this habit of going out, having drinks, or going to the bar, or hanging around in the pub, or dancing or something. It depends on your friends. I actually have Chinese friends, they also do that in China. But I didn't, so for me that's the difficult part in the beginning, to like have the first time to just experience, and then you find it's okay. It's fine. You can actually enjoy, and it's fun.
And that brings me to a question, because you were doing these things here, hanging out with your friends, going for a drink, going dancing, and so on. And surely that got you? Surely many times people told you or made the remark, "Oh, you're not like a typical Chinese," and I'm sure you got that a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, I got that a lot.
You're not typical Chinese, and did you feel? What did you have any special emotional reaction to that remark or not?
For me, it's fine. It's not negative for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I don't feel you should put people into any categories or stereotypes that you meet. Everyone is like doing their own way, so it's normal that you don't think it's like Chinese, but you actually meet Chinese people like that. There's always like...
Yeah. And now with this specific remark, there's every time somebody throws that remark at you obviously the first thing, in my opinion, you have to do is to assess the intentionality of the other person, right? And with this particular remark, because of the notion of the stereotypical Chinese, that actually happens to be a sort of a compliment. People say that to you with the intention of saying, "Oh, you're cool," or "you're nice," because the stereotypical image of the average Chinese for the non-Chinese
doesn't
people
necessarily have to be a compliment.
Yeah, but
this context,
but that's how people generally.
Well, in this context, it is,
meant it.
If a German goes into a Hare Krishna thing, and is only meeting all these people who are just going and praying about things,
or for instance,
you will also make the same comment. You don't seem like a typical German.
Yeah, but in this case, what they meant is you're outgoing, you're more social, you're more talkative, or even I would say even more fun, because again, you must be familiar. Or you must at least understand what's the stereotypical image of the Chinese person for non-Chinese people. And that usually contains elements like they are not so outgoing, they don't speak that much, they mostly retreat within their own bubble, they don't go probably dancing a lot, they probably don't.
Yeah, but for me it's also like I understand the obstacles for a Chinese to integrate that way as well, like better than the others. Because I know people are still outgoing, but they are not outgoing with international group. Maybe because of language, maybe because they don't like drinking or dancing. But they are still very social when you are meeting them. Like when I'm meeting them, they are social. But it's just like the international society is not going to see that because maybe it's just the problem of language. I
think the language creates an extra potential barrier for sure for the Chinese.
Yeah. Sure. So I think a point I'm trying to get at is that so it doesn't bother you in any sense to know what the image of a stereotypical Chinese is, and to probably even go one step further and think that you know this beforehand, you know what the stereotype is, and you probably try to get into other people's head when they are first meeting you and probably imagining that they are already kind of labeling you with a set of stereotypes that maybe you feel like you need to push to break those stereotypes or not. I'm just going to give an example. For instance, I went to Oxford a year ago and I went to Airbnb. I was going to work there for a month, and the mister that owned the house was a mister from Saudi Arabia. And the first thing he did when he introduced himself, he told me where he's coming from. He told me, "I'm from Saudi Arabia, but I'm not a Muslim. I don't believe anymore." So he immediately told me, "I don't believe anymore." And he even said way more than that. He said, if you saw for me, I don't care what happens to Mecca. He tried so hard to distance himself from what he knows is the stereotypical image of a Saudi, that I could imagine that he has this preemptive kind of litany of like phrases or dispatch those. He wants to dispatch those identity markers as soon as possible as he meets somebody, right? Because the stereotypes and identity are very closely tied. So I was just wondering, do you ever feel that when you meet people
I think we really cannot compare with that.
That's an extreme
Saudi Arabia
case.
because they have more fear in this society. Maybe being from Middle East or being a Muslim, they have more fear about that identity. But here, I think being Asian in general, it's not a big problem.
So there's the fear context that she's talking about, like because
to a lesser extent,
the judgment is a lot more if you look Middle East, you look like you're coming from the Middle East, given the current context of the world and how the West is bashing. The Middle East.
I obviously mean I gave this example.
That is a skewed example in that sense. Yeah.
No, it's obviously more extreme. I was not because I cannot think of any closely parallel, very close parallel between the stereotypical identity of a Saudi with the stereotypical identity of a Chinese. It's entirely different markers for both stereotypes. But part of having some social intelligence, it requires you to be in the head of whoever you are conversing with to some degree. And that, especially when it's somebody that you don't know, or it's the first time these are the first occasions in which you're interacting with this other person, it always creeps into my head what can be the image that person is forming or had preformed of me just by the fact that we're interacting for the very first time. I personally don't bother. I don't really care. But there's a lot of people that care. There's a lot of people that care about the.
So you don't make any first-person impressions of people?
No, I do. I have a mold, right? We all have this.
So if you see someone with a big beard,
and he tells me I come from where, you know.
So the same
Iraq.
thing. Would it make a difference to you if the guy just said Salam Alaikum? Or the person said, I come from here, but I don't believe I am an anti-Muslim, ex-Muslim.
Let me tell you which ways If let's think about that particular example. Mm-hmm. So there's a guy, long beard, Arabic looking, and then he introduces himself to me for whatever reason. We happen to coincide for the first time, and then he says Salam Alaikum. So all this introductory scenario happens. One thing, just because we are kind of Bayesian calculators, I will associate with very likely that person is Muslim. I'm not gonna do anything about it, but if for whatever reason the topic of religion comes in our conversation, I will surely find myself being more careful with the words I might pick or with the way I will phrase things.
Yeah, but
even against my own will, and I would actually be bothered by that, you know, with myself somehow. I will. That doesn't mean that I would lie or I would have my opinion, but I will couch it differently, very likely, right? So to some degree, that the fact that I saw those markers, they fit nicely into a mold, and that mold still has some missing pieces, and I'm making some sort of like a statistical calculation of what those other pieces might be that fit the pattern, and based on that, there will be some modulation of my interaction, of my language. I none of my ideas. I really try. People have some principles. Let's say that's kind of one that I would at least aspire to have. But my interaction, it's always going to be colored by those.
It's not just your interaction. The if I ask you what do you think that person is doing and things like markers about him, you'll probably have a different set of judgments if he just introduces himself as Salam Alaikum, or if he says I am an ex-Muslim.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a different.
So that impression is already being stamped.
Yeah, it's immediate,
and that is why he, in case of this example that you gave, that person already feels that is kind of how people think. So he already makes you primes you towards the direction that I am like you, one of the Westerners. So that you get your guards down, because unfortunately that's how it works.
That's how it is. That's one of the reasons why this topic about identity, I think, it's very interesting, because it's very closely connected to stereotypes.
Yes.
And then things get a little bit nuanced there, because I don't think stereotypes are not arbitrary. Stereotypes are not built out of thin air. Stereotypes are generalizations that have some core grain of cultural truth, let's say. So they are built upon some statistical correlations. I don't know how else to put it.
So either a core grain of truth or a core grain of misinformation, because you are so into that culture.
Yeah.
Right. Like for instance, if Taiwanese people come, or say South Koreans come, and I look at them and I think, they are from East Asia, so I know a bit about China, and I extrapolate that to them, right? So that also matters, right? So it doesn't have to be core grain of truth, but
that's just because of ignorance. I mean, the moment
So the ignorance is also playing part.
The moment they tell you, okay, it's not like they're going to be reading your mind. I know you thought I'm Chinese, but actually I'm South Korean, and you think, well, actually,
it's even worse. I'm from Taiwan. I'm not Chinese.
There's this nasty game online where they show the eyes of a person, and you're supposed to guess if it's Japanese, Chinese, or South Korean.
Okay.
For me, that's a nasty game.
But the funny thing is, most of people who met me for the first time, they would assume that I'm from South Korea. Even people from South Korea. So you see how difficult it is to distinguish people. Like even Chinese people, they would suspect. Like,
so they are also doing the same stereotypes based on how you're behaving.
Yeah, or my looks. It's only my looks, because I haven't talked yet. If I start speaking, they know I'm Chinese.
As soon as the accent comes out.
Without talking, they would ask me like, where are you from? I said, I'm from China. Okay. Then we start talking Chinese.
Okay. But then that never crosses your mind. I don't even want to say you worry. Probably you don't worry. I don't worry if I introduce myself as a Mexican, that the people immediately, so probably you like dancing salsa. Let's go dance salsa. And I know that I don't like it. I can't dance the basics, but it's not that something that I particularly like. But I don't bother if they think that way. I mean, I just don't care. But again, I know for a fact that a lot of people care. And a lot of people, if they interact with somebody that clearly has that stereotype in their mind and they externalize it somehow by making an assumption about them, they get very riled up and like, but why would you think I would like salsa just because I come from Colombia?
There is a problem with that. I think I see the other side of the coin as well. Like what the point you're trying to make, that people sometimes get really riled up by that.
Because of identity. And that's a problem of... That's too big a word. Well, it is a kind of a problem with people that are so concerned about defining their identity with every possible color that they can add to it, and they take every one of these properties that build their identity as essential properties of their personhood, and then if you step over them or you make associations that were not necessarily granted, then they take this as like a very personal criticism of their person, precisely because of how much they value this what they think constitutes their identity. But seems to not be
Is that a problem for you?
For me, no. For me, it's a problem with other people.
No, but if people just immediately stereotype you and say, let's go dance salsa. Oh, Mexican. Name Nacho. Oh, what irony.
Well, it's very hard to be taken seriously when your nickname is Nacho. That's one thing. So.
And in fact, I think I was telling a friend that I am doing a podcast with a Mexican. And he said, what is his name? Nacho. I said, yes.
I would high five that. That's how bothered I am about it. So Jiaying from China, Kung Fu Panda.
Unfortunately, I'm like you, so I always like take this as jokes. But I think some people would.
But I have the counter stereotype which exhausts me. So for me, it is exhausting to, like, I feel exhausted even before I'm going to a house party, for instance, where I don't know a lot of people, because I know that there's a barrage of India-related questions that I have to answer. before we actually have a conversation.
Are they about spirituality or something?
No, it can go anywhere. It could be, which part of India do you come from? Calcutta. Calcutta, that's in the east. I'm like, yes, that's in the east. And then they talk something about Delhi, or they once visited Jaipur. So it's basically small talk, which is mostly about the weather. Switches to small talk, which is mostly about India.
Yeah, but that's small talk. It's
So no, I'm just saying it's just exhausting, but you have to swim your way across that.
So nothing like that. You
No.
don't mind at
So
all.
so where is the identity crisis then? So
crisis.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference is when you're here, you feel you can put yourself, like the individual, above a group or everything. It's like you have to think about yourself first, but it should be the opposite way around back home.
Oh, right.
So
collectivist versus individualist
so it's like
approach.
And that emphasis is there in the socialist roots of the government, right?
not only the social, it's long
even beyond,
beyond like long history back from like Confucius maybe. Yes, because it's I think the governors always prefer those kind of philosophy.
Social harmony above
About like you should look for the common harmony of the society, not just yourself. Like think a bigger picture of that. So after living here, I think in Europe it's like the opposite way around.
When you were in China, or probably even when you arrived here, you very much subscribe to that? I mean, was that a part of your, say, core beliefs? Like, I really see the value in prioritizing social harmony over, say, individual happiness or pursuit of individual happiness.
On liberty.
Were you like that? Or you were always kind of like in a position?
Yeah, I'm always like in a struggling position because I feel there are good aspects that you are thinking about the whole entity sometimes. So things are easier. So because everyone would step behind and say, okay, we just go to a common conclusion now. It's fine. We don't need to just give our own opinions. Like that's what my Chinese friend also complained about with me, because I have never like studied in a master degree or a bachelor degree that you actually have to do some group work with the different countries, the students from different countries, and they always complain like, oh my god, those Western people, they just want to push their ideas into the project, and it's getting so complicated. We just want to get it done like peacefully or efficiently. Just don't make so much trouble. It's like
So your point here is when you are in a group with Westerners. So these guys, the Chinese friends of yours, they complain that the focus is not on together finishing it, but more like the emphasis is like the worldview is their own. And they are seeing it through their own specific lens.
Yes.
And that sometimes can be very frustrating if you're subscribed to the other kind of framework.
Yes, and also in everyday life. I mean, for me, here is more like everyday life, because I feel maybe it's the people I meet. I think they're less considerate about others. Like they don't consider other people's feelings. For example, if I go on a bus, and if someone is coming with a huge luggage or some food stuff, and then I would like automatically like step away from that area that they can put their stuff. But for some people here, I think it's not like.
The typical thing is people that put their bags and backpacks and suitcases occupying as many possible seats as around them. That's very something that happens.
But that's a conditioning thing. Like you can still have a very individualistic lens about the world and still have been just trained to be nice to people.
Yeah. That's true.
It's possible.
And that I've seen a lot of places also. Like if you go further to the West Germany, there's still an individual lens to their life and what is their private life and what is the public life. There's clear demarcation. But when you talk to them or ask them, okay, I can't find these things, they will immediately pop out their phone and in the Google Maps show you the directions.
But still, that's when push comes to shove, if somebody asks you, okay, fine, that's a very nice, let's say, template to follow. So we care about your individual ideas and pursue your personal happiness, but always be nice to other people too. So that sounds very nice, right? But if somebody pushes you and say, okay, how would you like to build a society? What's better? A society where the collective well-being trumps it's over the individual desires of the members of the population, or a society that prioritizes individual development, even if that creates sometimes friction with norms that are collective or accepted by the collective. So I believe that in China, this is my assumption, also based on stereotypes a lot, but that the collective trump is a society. The society is built in such a way so as to favor social cohesion, social harmony, even if that implies to snuff out like individuality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also,
and in this side of the world, it's kind of the opposite.
But it also has to do with the history that we are coming from, like an agricultural society.
Mm.
So you're based on your land, you're based on your family. So you have to sacrifice yourself already in this family unit, that you have to do the things best for the family, not just for yourself. So that's like the starting point. Then the family also do that for the bigger society and for the whole country and stuff. So this kind of philosophy is going like upgraded.
But
this philosophy happened everywhere, right?
Yeah, at some point in the beginning.
I think it's just that the concept of the Enlightenment movement that went through in Europe in the 1800 or 1900, which talked about 1700,
even before.
So that gave rise to principles of liberty and like those kind of ethos values, which to say in India, it got passed on to us with the British and the French. Like we are also inspired with our constitution. From there. So those ideas popped in there, but that revolution went in the other direction in China, right? Because instead of having those things coming in, communism came in.
Before communism came in, like actually now the government in Taiwan, they were the government before the Communist Party, and they already advertised the democracy and stuff, but they didn't succeed in the end. So that's why it's substituted by the communist thing. And then it's I think it also integrates well with the culture. This Confucius, more
exactly.
That's the
more,
foundational philosophy.
The foundational thing. So they fit well into the society and fit well with this agricultural country. So it fits well. But now I think the conflicts comes because we are bigger number of people living in like cities. Then you are not based on your land or your family anymore. You are more likely like an individual. Or a smaller family.
It just didn't happen that way. I mean, because here, before, the archetypical proponent of collectivism, which might be Marx and Engels, these philosophers, social scientists, economists, I don't know what else. Probably you can also call them philosophers, whatever. Was their ideas arose in a scenario where there were another set of ideas prior to their ideas that kind of enshrined individualism. So it was like a struggle somehow. These ideas didn't come up in a vacuum. They were not foundational, as in the case of China, for instance, with Confucius. So as Mitra said, in the Enlightenment during the Enlightenment period, a lot of philosophy was written to prioritize individuality to some degree and individual freedom, for instance. So if you read for like John Stuart Mill, it's all about individual freedom, and so it's harder, like to change the path. And probably it's a good one.
No, I don't know if it's a path, but it's a revolution or a different path that was taken and processed for a much longer period. And in China, the conflict starts now. And it is the chaos is the fact that everywhere else that they look, it is so far ahead that the conflicts are much stronger, much sharper. than it would be if they were meeting people from 18th century Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now
can I just ask one more question? Is the conflict more because of the fact that all families, more or less all families, have one kid in China?
You mean the problem with like individual or being?
Yeah, no. Because there, if you have only one kid, your entire life depends on that one kid. So there is a focus towards something unitary, and when the entire population is focused towards a communal thing, is there a dichotomy there? Some dissonance between.
I don't think so. No, because how we are educated in school is still in a very collective way. You're always considered in one of these classes, and if one of you did something wrong, then the whole classes get maybe some points, get some punishment.
So what happens with dissent? I mean,
like for example, we would have this ranking or scoring system in school, and it's based on your behavior, not academic behavior, but other like disciplines.
So like Harry Potter.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, similar like that. Yeah. So when someone did something wrong, then your whole class gets the points. So you have that in mind.
And how do you win? What happens when at the end of the year you have the least point or the most points? Is there any punishment based on that? It's just pride?
Not really. Yeah, it's just pride. It's like maybe they announce it in front of the whole school, and then you feel like, oh my god, we're like the worst.
Yeah, but that brings a whole different dimension to the idea of personal responsibility, right? And that's something that happens in collectivist cultures where your own misdeeds, your misbehavior, it doesn't only reflect upon your personal reputation, which is more or less is what happens here. You know, here. You as a person represent yourself.
Yeah.
If you behave badly, there might be comments about, how did your mom raise you or stuff like that, right? But it's not taken to heart to that level, so as to really extrapolate the responsibility of your behavior to your mom or to your parents to some degree. That's possible, but probably not to that extent. So here, the notion of reputation is a personal thing. It's your behavior affects your personal reputation, but in a setting such as that one, your behavior, everyone is going to be liable to pay for your misbehavior. Yes. Everyone around you, and obviously that has to put some hurdles to the notion of dissent from one side, and I would even say personal development of your very own personality to some degree, right? Or to which degree you feel that you can have a controversial opinion that probably nobody around you will approve of, and you can externalize it. Here, obviously, you also feel some pressure to do that because, after all, you do belong. You do belong to some group, no matter what. Yeah. You know, you're never necessarily in a vacuum, and you don't want that your opinions are so outlandish or so strident so that you get ostracized by your group. It's kind of unlikely, but let's say it can happen. It can happen if you suddenly declare, I come to think that the white race is actually superior in every sense to the black race. Then probably, very rightly, your friends will disenfranchise you, like, okay, stay away and treat you as if you have some contagious disease.
Very controversial statements, Nacho.
Yeah. I had to go to the extreme. Just as I use the Saudi mister, as an example of somebody that has some vested interest in kind of disengaging himself from the stereotype. So in this case too. Anyway, now I got a little bit lost about the point that I wanted to make. I think the point I wanted to make is how far. I want to see the contrast from your perspective about how far you think you can go here with really expressing yourself in whichever way you feel like it and speak your personal opinion about things, and if that is somehow more controlled or more
hidden.
When you are back home, is that something that it feels like a difference?
It feels like a difference that I wouldn't say everything that I would think about when I'm back home. But I'm not going to do that here as well. But here I can express more, because I think people would be more acceptable about different types of people, like diversity. You can have different incomes, you can have different hobbies, you can have different opinions, you can be LGBT and so on. But in China or more in East Asia, there's a problem that you have like one standard for everyone.
So the cultural construct of what is a proper life is very strong.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Like one standard, for instance, I mean, I want to get to kind of concrete things, and you tell me if I'm really off the mark or not. For instance, premarital sex, having sex before marriage, is that like a strong?
This is like something unspoken.
That's what I mean. So that's one clear example, right? That's one clear example.
Unspoken, but it's like it's happening, but nobody talks about it.
But it's happening only in Shanghai or everywhere? Like you may also have a skewed view on this, right?
I may also have a skewed view, because
even
I only
the sense of individualism must be still much higher in Shanghai than some other places.
That I would say, because when I compare maybe people from other cities, their friends around them are probably getting married even earlier than when you're in Shanghai.
So in Shanghai you already had a slightly diluted social construct.
Yeah, already slightly diluted, but when you go back to family, they maybe try to fit you into that common good life. Yes.
Yeah. So, but
it's like you're going to a university, and after university you get a job and you get married, you get a kid, and then you get a house first and get married, get a kid, and then you have...
So now the common narrative has one kid or two kids?
Now it's two.
Two kids. So that's part of the narrative now.
The standard.
No, that's part of the policy, but I think they're not very successful with that. Oh, okay. Because now people are already used to not having so much kids.
It's a completely different lifestyle.
Yeah. Now they're more like here. It's like
it's something I see, right? Like I know that people coming from families with more than one kids, when they want to have kids, they also wish for more than one. And if people come from families where they are the only kid, so there's a tendency to follow what you have seen as the norm.
Okay, but also the problem is like with the economic development, you would also tend to have less kids, I think.
Yeah, so it's harder to sustain two kids.
It's harder to sustain. Now people are like, we cannot afford the second kids, so we're just going to have one. Yeah. Or no. None.
But I kind of took away from your point. Yeah.
No. What I wanted to say was I wanted to kind of extract or discover some concrete examples of topics that might be taboo there, that you probably don't feel so comfortable giving your opinion about, especially if it's a contrarian opinion. Let's say, I'm not talking about you in particular, but let's imagine a person that says, I'm all up for premarital sex. Premarital sex is awesome and everybody should have it. And then, and here if I say that, if I gather a random sampling of Germans, and I tell them, this is really what I think, and
they would find it funny.
They would probably laugh.
What are you talking about?
And some of them might say, yeah, me too. I agree, and there will make like a community of people that are promoting premarital sex. Anyway, and this would be probably a thing that would be much harder to say.
Yeah, for sure.
Or I don't know, like just take an ordinary job. Not taking a really good job, but like a really ordinary job would already be like, people think, what are you doing? Like, what are you thinking? Like, after you get all these degrees, you don't want to go for like the best and the highest, and then you just feel
pressure.
The career pressure. You feel like, I don't want to explain it. Like, I just want to.
So this is also a social pressure.
Yeah, it's like,
it's
I
not
just
a
want to
personal
do.
Pressure.
Yeah, you feel like I just want to do what I want to do. I can be a bartender and whatever I want, but I think people will find it crazy if you just say that.
crazy to the point of just thinking, oh, that girl is crazy, or crazy to, I really don't want to hang out with that person.
No. Just like, okay,
she's a bit different.
Yeah, or like gossip, or like, you know.
I think that's another point that is very important to note, that like I'm assuming Shanghai is very similar to India in that sense. India as in like the big cities in India, like we feel the cultural pressure, but if you don't comply completely to it, people are still not going to completely ostracize you. It's not like small villages or much more conservative parts.
Yeah.
So it's not as hardcore as like the impression may come out.
But it's quite
but there is an element of that. But of course, right now we talked about the community over the individual from the light, from the lens that this is like something terrible in comparison, because it is completely suppressing the individual identity. But there are a lot of plus sides of community as well, with respect to mental health.
Yeah.
And that is a point we should not like completely forget about. Like there are certain things like I do know that because I have an Indian community out here, any kind of monetary trouble I go through, any kind of life crisis I go through, I just can land in someone's place and just they will take care of me for a few days if required. And I even though I have very close German friends, there will be a certain private public space that they value, that they will probably, maybe there will be exceptions of course in both directions, but there will be a much stronger tendency to help as far as you can go. So there is value to that. So I don't even think that I will go through that, but I know that the fact that I can actually rely on some people on the basis of that can already be something like the safety net that you feel from community. That can be, of course, here you get the safety net from the government, but there is still an element of social structure
from the bottom.
Yeah.
Of cohesion.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally see the value of both sides. I think there was this philosopher Durkheim who kept on kind of always enshrining the value of the fact that you live in you don't live in a vacuum. Social ties matter. There's this notion of social capital, which is all about that, the networking in which you find yourself.
And that is precisely what the religious arguments also rely on sometimes, right? That it gives you a feeling of community. So I am not prescribing that get rid of any kind of individual wishes that you have. But the idea, the focus should be towards trying to make a society where that aspect is taken into account for. Sure. That should not be completely undermined and got rid of.
Yeah, but the problem is when that is dictated from above, right? So I would say that we live in that kind of society here. You know, if you value culture, if you value social bonds and community and collectivism, you can actually do that and live that kind of a life where you, by your own personal decision, your own personal choice, give more value to a collective kind of a lifestyle. And if you don't, you can also pursue that. And in the Chinese context, I don't know how. It's not a totalitarian regime like North Korea or something like that. I mean, that's going far beyond. To the Chinese context it's not quite like that. But there is more social pressure towards valuing the collective side.
Yeah. No, totally. So I also think, like in case of places like India and China, maybe the focus should totally be on trying to focus towards the individual goals a bit, and then but make sure that while you're evolving the systems there, you keep that thing into account, because I don't think it is absolutely perfect here with regard to that. I really think that the community aspect is has been undermined a bit.
But that happens organically. By people.
Yes, and people are craving to go. Like I already see in Neustadt, in one part of the town, the sense of community that they're trying to build within the community, and people really embrace it.
Sure.
Yeah, because there is a lack of it. There is a vacuum.
Yeah, the important thing is that there's the freedom to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about like it's like a top-down decision, or it's like a bottom-up activity or something.
But I think even if it is not top-down, if the culture embraces it as this is the way of life, it becomes an inherent top-down thing, even without someone imposing it on you.
Yeah, if there's some. Yeah, if it's a cultural, if it's part of the cultural code, let's say, in which you are living, to just give more value to the collective aspect, then possibly, well, not possibly, very likely that's going to result in people valuing that more.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I think I'm very satisfied in the way in which things run in that regard, in let's say the West, because it's really kind of a choice that most people have.
But it's also a different scale. I mean, when I'm back in Shanghai, imagine yourself, you're just 1 out of 25 million people, so you're just like a ant.
Yeah.
Your value is not so much. So that's also like my doubt when I'm back home. So it's like your personal or individual value is not that high because you're nobody. You're just 1 out of millions. But when you're here, you have like a limited amount of people, I have to say, to take care. And it's a different scale of people to deal with.
And in a way that the opposite tends to happen here. So here in large cities, people really, there's a sector of the population made out of people that really try their uttermost best to stand out somehow. You know, you see
these street
deviant characters that even by way of their looks, you see that they are investing so much into portraying themselves as having a very distinctive identity. That tends to happen here. The larger the city becomes, the more people you're going to have that are going that way to kind of stand out, to become somehow.
But here you stand out in different ways. Maybe you can have like a special hobby or special identity or something. But I think standing out in an East Asian culture, it means you have to succeed. Have to
within
be
the template.
Like you have to be
within
wealthy and within the structure. Like you have to be wealthy, you have a higher rank of the position or something. Like
always fit the mold, but be the best at fitting the stereotypes of the mold.
Yeah.
I can imagine that can put a lot of pressure.
That's how I feel about the society, especially for men. I think it's much more for men.
The
stereotypes, like the expectations are stronger from men.
So for me it's quite hard.
Is that part of what's causing all this dissonance in your head sometimes? That you don't know which, let's say, cultural template you would prefer to follow? Whether it is I want me to be successful in the Chinese sense of the world, let's say, of the word, let's say, or you prefer to have this life here in which you can success is something, it's something that everybody kind of would like to aspire to in one way or another, but possibly there's more flexibility in the notion of success in this side of the world.
So maybe not success, like as in a goals, like as you set your goals, right?
Yes.
So you're very confused with what goals you set for yourself?
Yeah, kind of, because sometimes I feel it's better, like here you can just set different goals. Like everyone, you have different goals. You can be, if you like, you can be a good bartender, you can be a good surfer, or do any extreme sports. But back home it's probably more on your career. But I'm also struggling because I think career is a big part of your identity.
No, for sure.
Still. So I'm still thinking about it. But I would actually prefer the society to be more inclusive and open to embrace different kinds of goals. From different persons. So
it is two stringent. Like the way the narrative is very, very stringent, and you wish for more flexibility back home.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cool.
I don't know how's that with your experience.
No, for me, I don't. I maybe that will just reveal. I will reveal myself as very shallow in that sense, or not. But I don't. This is just something that doesn't create a lot of pressure in me. It does.
Survival does.
If I put it in the but formulate it in terms of achieving success. If I want to be honest about how much pressure that puts on me, it does, because I think the majority of people strive for some kind of status within the people in the community that you find yourself embedded. So success is a marker for status. Now, success at what exactly? That varies from one person to another. And in my case, the kind of success that I would like to have would be, I don't know, it's definitely not dictated per se by the standard norms of career success that I can come up with. But yeah, definitely, let's say at whatever thing that I set to myself as a profession or as a main activity, obviously I want to be particularly good at that.
But that's your own narrative.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's the same with me also. But but I would also agree that coming from that part of the world, we do have very, very well defined narratives.
But I have to say, I see a lot of changes now in the next generation already. Like people maybe 5-6 years younger than me. They are also pursuing different kind of lives they want, starting their own business and trying out stuff. They are more relaxed since, I mean, the economy is already into a stable or enough to feed their parents and themselves, so they don't need so much to worry about, so they can also pursue what they want.
Do you feel like you want to go back to China when those people are in power?
Maybe the young people. Maybe that would be cool. That would be cool. Yeah, that would be cool. Yes.
I think we have to start to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Then. Any final remarks? How do we end up this one then?
We'll let her take the last words.
My last words?
Yeah, not the last words of your life. The last words for this episode.
Oh my god, it's so heavy.
I mean, not that. We don't want to put that much pressure on you.
Okay, I think for my own experience, I struggled between my identities, whether I'm going to too much Occidental or I should be more Chinese in a way. But now I find it's a decision of ourselves. Everybody, you are just the best version of yourself, so just make your own choices would be good. And the society should provide an environment to support everyone to have that.
Are you less Chinese now?
I have to say I'm always not that Chinese.
So people were right all along. You're not a typical Chinese.
I'm sorry about that, but I'm not.
No, don't.
On that note, let's call it a night.
Yeah. Okay. With that, we need to say goodbye to the audience. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you the next time.
Yeah.
If you like what we do, please help us continue doing it simply by subscribing to our Podbean or YouTube channel, following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, visiting us on our website tillthebottom.com, or simply spreading the word. Find the links in the description below. The music you hear in the background is a track called Face to Face, performed by Daphne. Thank you for listening, and until next time, cheers.